Six Nations Team of the Week for week number 2. France up against Ireland was a good win for the French. Wales upset a few people's expectations by beating Scotland. I picked that one, just FYI. Didn't pick them getting a hiding the week before against Ireland though. And England did the expected and got a pretty comfortable win over Italy. Let's pick 15 guys from that round of games, and you guys can let me know your thoughts on who you would have or who you wouldn't have in your team, because your team's definitely going to be very different from my own. We will start in the front row with a prop, and I have gone with a Frenchman in Cyril Bay, the loose head for France. He continues to be one of the best loose heads in the world. He's just a great scrummager and very busy fella around the park. He gets rewarded this week as well with one of those sweet, sweet tries. So, he finishes off a good move set up by his fellow prop, Antonio, who has a good run. He has 5 runs for 10 metres, which is not a bad work rate for a prop. It's not Taniela Tupou stuff, if you're familiar with him from the Wallabies, but it's solid enough. He has a defender beaten. He has 8 from 9 tackles. He has a pass. He concedes 1 turnover. And he doesn't concede any penalties. So overall, I thought for France, Cyril Bay looked pretty ever-present, and he stood up pretty well to, scrummaging against Tyke Furlong, who was one of the better, if not best, tight heads in the world as well. I have also picked, alongside him, Winnie Antonio, the tight head for France. So it's an all-French propping duo. Interesting one with him. He has 2 runs for 10 metres, which is a hell of a return if you're looking at metres per carry. He's not getting a heck of a lot of ball in hand, but what happens the phase after each of his runs? The French score a try. Like I mentioned, Bay got one after his second run, and his first run sets up the first try to Dupont. Phase later, it goes to Intermark and then out to Dupont. So, Antonio, kind of secondary assists to both the French tries. There you go. But you're mainly looking at him. He gets 7 from 7 tackles. He scrummages like a bit of a beast. He doesn't pass it at all. When he gets the ball, he carries it, and that's twice. Doesn't concede any penalties either. So like I said, the Irish scrum's pretty solid. So I think both these guys acquitted themselves pretty well. Other props I've mentioned. Schoolman for Scotland I thought was pretty solid. Genge, Furlong, Thomas Francis from Wales. So, a fair few names you could go for, but I have gone with the 2 Frenchmen. Hooker, tough one, but I ended up going with a double try scorer in Jamie George. Tougher one, maybe, than some of the other positions to pick, because there were some genuine good contenders as well. But how often does a hooker score 2 tries and neither of them are maul tries? Not that often. These days. He does get 2 tries. One's a wee pick and go from close range, and one he's out on the wing doing glorious things when he takes on the defending, I think it was winger, and flattens him. So good stuff from Jamie George. He has 8 runs for 20 metres, which is a solid return. Good work rate to get in on the ball as much as he did. He has a clean break, which is his try. 3 passes and an offload, 5 from 6 tackles, wins a turnover, doesn't concede any penalties. The lineout's pretty solid with him in charge. I know they miss at least 2 in the game, and I think at least one of them's Cowan-Dickey. I can't remember if the other one's Cowan-Dickey or not. But anyway, I thought Jamie George was pretty solid. I feel a bit gutted I didn't pick Ryan Elias, because that guy gets so much grief, but he had a really good game for Wales. So if you wanted to have him in, I would not blame you for a second. Marchand continues to look good for France. But there you go. 2 Frenchmen and a Englishman. It sounds like the start to a joke walking into a pub, but there you go. That's what it is. Locks are maybe a little bit harder to pick, but I ended up going with a Welshman in Will Rowlands. Now, this is maybe partly me giving him credit for 2 games in a row now, but I thought he did pretty good once again. He continues to have one of the better work rates amongst the Welsh players. 11 runs for 7 metres is not the best metres per carry rate, but he's kind of offering himself as an option at the right times when needed. Like, I know he carries at least in the build-up to, is it the drop goal or is it one of the tries when like Wales need a runner, the quick ball is there and he's just there making himself available. He's in the bottom of heaps of rucks, so just overall very busy man. But I mean, as I said, 11 runs to get 7 meters ain't that flash. I mean, the work rate is enormous. 11 runs is phenomenal, but he's not getting a heck of a lot of meters. 11 from 12 tackles is also pretty bloody good. He doesn't pass it. Maybe that's something he needs to add into his repertoire, is the ability not just to tuck and carry, but if that's your role, that's your role. He does concede one penalty, but yeah, I thought overall he had a pretty good game, and across 2 games now in the absence of old Alan Wynne. The other lock, I have gone with another Frenchman via South Africa. Kind of this one gets mentioned a wee bit. And Paul Willemse, he had a pretty tidy shift, and maybe a guy whose stats don't quite do him justice. I mean, part of the reason I think the French did so well was the big physical nature of their pack. They were not really easy to be bullied around, and he perhaps epitomizes that. He has 5 runs for 7 meters, which is a slightly better meters per carry rate than old Will Rowlands, but it's not a heck of a lot to write home about either. He has 2 passes, which is again 2 more than Rowlands, but 7 from 10 tackles is okay without being great. He does get stepped for the Jameson Gibson Park try. You'd have to say that, but I mean, he wins a turnover. He gets 2 line-out wins. He only plays 58 minutes, but he was just another one that was everywhere, like crashing into rucks, cleaning guys out. Like, that was just what he was all about. And as I said, that's kind of part of what I thought was getting the French guys over the line. Other good locks, I mean, Gilchrist for Scotland had a fair few tackles. Tyke Byrne got one of his trademark turnovers, and also got through a fair bit of a defensive shift. But there you go. There's your type 5. Loose forwards. I have managed to get another Englishman on here in Maro Itoje on the blind side this week rather than in the second row. Now, he's also kind of a weird one that I don't think the stats maybe do him justice. I mean, one good thing about him is his 8 runs for 16 meters. He's not usually a guy who carries for much more than a meter per carry. I know I'm just obsessing about the numbers here, but I've followed his career long enough to know for him, that's actually a really good rate. And they emphasized him getting over the advantage line a bit more in that number 6 role instead of being a lock. And I think we saw that from him. He beats a defender. He has 4 passes, 5 from 6 tackles. He's ever present at line-out time. He gets 4 of those. He does concede 1 penalty. I know people like to obsess about his penalty count. 1 penalty from him. This week he gets denied a try. But everything England was doing, he seemed to be pretty well involved. So I thought Maro had a pretty good shift as well. You can always just see him involved in the rough stuff. Next, I managed to get an Italian in here. That's 2 weeks in a row. I know in previous Six Nations I've sometimes not managed one, but it is getting easier to put Italian guys into the squad, even though they lost by 33 points to 0. Michele Lamaro, the captain, the open side flanker, he just loves making a million tackles, man. I love a guy who likes a million tackles. You know me, I like Johnny Gray and loads of other players like Tame Basham last week who just get through the work. And that's this guy. 19 from 20 tackles. Is he the best this week? He's certainly one of them. He's got a turnover in there to boot, which is kind of what you want from your number 7. He gets 20 run meters from 8 carries, which is not a phenomenal return for a Lucy, but it's pretty solid. I think it's probably better than most of the guys I've put on the board so far. It's the same as Jamie George. 7 passes and 2 offloads, so he likes getting his hand on the bill. He's an involved captain. It's one of the good things about having your captain as a Lucy. He's kind of involved in all the action, both ball in hand and defensively. He wins a line-out. He doesn't concede any penalties. He does concede 2 turnovers, but apart from that, I thought he had a pretty solid shift in a losing effort. So fingers crossed some of the guys coming through at the age group level can accompany him on to some better days for Italy in the future. The final Lucy, I went with another Frenchman in Gregory Aldrit. I think that might be 2 weeks in a row for him. I think he got man of the match from memory. Also, if you watch the game, and it's easier with him because he wears kind of distinctive headwear. The scrum cap's got like yellow through it. He's just everywhere. Whether it's tackles or cleanouts or, first man arriving at a ruck or whatever you want, he's just always there. There's one time where he makes 2 cleanouts in a row. Like, he's just made the clean out. By the time they've moved to the next phase, he's already gotten up off the ground. Like, he makes the next clean out. He's just, like, having his wheat bix for breakfast or whatever it is. But, I mean, 8 runs, 30 metres for him is quiet compared to last week, but that was against Italy last week. Beats a defender, has 6 passes and offload. So, like I mentioned with Lamaro, high involvement rates. He's got 9 from 9 tackles, no penalties conceded. He does have 1 turnover conceded, but I think that one they had advantage and they go back for a penalty anyway. So, yeah, I thought he was pretty bloody good. And if you had him in a fantasy team, he also did pretty well. So, there you go. There's your forward pack. Other guys I could have mentioned, Hamish Watson got through a ton of tackles for Scotland. Gellant also for France got through a heap of work, both ball in hand and without. Alex Dombrandt, I've probably done the dirty on because he was very, very, like, if you're looking at pure stats, he's probably the guy of the week from the forwards. Generally got through 70 odd run meters. I am using Opta stats, by the way, rather than the Six Nations stats, just because it's consistent with all the other comps I follow. Who else? Moriarty, I thought, for Wales was also pretty good. So take your pick, but these are the ones that I have gone with. Scrum half, I think it's probably a pretty easy call. I will be surprised if many people picking a team of the week have somebody else other than Dupont in their team of the week. He gets a try. The opener for the French, he gets a try assist. He has 6 runs for 48 metres. If you're looking for that return on metres per carry, he's got it in spades there. A clean break, 3 defenders beaten. He has 43 passes and offload. He has 7 from 7 tackles. He's got a line-out one. I can't remember that. It must have been a quick line-out at some point, or was it a long one? I mean, 1 turnover conceded, but everything compared to last week where he was pretty quiet, a lot of what he touched this week just gone turned a lot more to gold, didn't it? So, yeah, I think kind of more what we expect from Antoine Dupont as captain. Handled the pressure of a big game pretty well. Trusted his kicker to kick all the points for him. So, yeah, Dupont for mine at number 9. I don't know who else you'd go with. You guys leave me some suggestions because, like, a lot of them, it's kind of a toss-up, or, you can look at one guy's tackles compared to another guy's work with the ball, or maybe some unseen stats or things that aren't represented in the stats, but I think Dupont. 10's a tough one, but I ended up going with Dan Biggar from Wales. First win for him as captain in what was certainly a high-pressure game, as I mentioned, and they mentioned it in the post-match press conference. The media negativity around this one was pretty brutal. They've probably taken a little bit of that pressure off with this win. I mean, Wales scored 20 points, and Biggar gets 15 of them, which is not a bad effort for him. He gets 4 penalties, a drop goal. People are questioning the drop goal, and I did question the drop goal. I've gone back and looked at it. I mean, he does kick it from right out in front. The penalty would have been about 10 yards to the left, so not a guaranteed. I mean, for a kicker of his quality, pretty much a guaranteed shot over, but it was right out in front for the taking. So, I mean, I also would have liked to see them go for the try, but in the scheme of things, it seems like a pretty bloody wise decision with hindsight, doesn't it? He has 6 runs for 45 metres, which is more than I think we are used to kind of seeing from him. He's not necessarily known as kind of a big running 10. He can, and he certainly proved so at the weekend. He gets a defender beaten. 26 passes means he was getting a lot of ball. He gets 13 from 14 tackles, including 1 on a rampaging Duhan van der Merwe. So I think you got to give Dan Biggar credit. If you wanted to go for other 10s, obviously Marcus Smith for England ran the show really well, gets a try and a try assist. So yeah, I mean, if you wanted to go with Smith, you would be well within your rights. If you wanted to go with Joey Carberry under a bit of pressure on his own in a losing effort for Ireland, I would also say, he performed pretty admirably given the pressure. But yeah, for mine, I'm going to go with Dan the Man. For 12, I think it's maybe the hardest pick of all. Which 12 was absolutely outstanding this week? I think there's a lot of guys who were like solid without being spectacular. So, yeah, I ended up going with Big Bundy Aki this week. He got through a lot of work. 5 runs for 20 metres is not his best effort ball in hand, but it's like, again, solid without being absolutely phenomenal. He has 3 passes and an offload, so much kind of fewer involvements compared to last week where him and Ringrose just kind of ran riot. But I like the fact that he gets through his 9 from 9 tackles. So does his core job well without there being kind of any obvious flaws there. But yeah, there we go. Bundy Aki. It's kind of a weird one. I mean, who else do you go with? Maybe Slade. Slade's boot was pretty effective for England, but yeah, I thought 12 was a pretty tough one this week. But anyway, you guys let me know your thoughts. 13, and I've seen mixed feedback on this fella. Seems like a lot of people don't rate him, but I thought Owen Watkin for Wales, I thought he looked pretty tidy. Admittedly, he kicks one ball out on the full. Like, you know, he's going for a 50-22 and he just boots it out on the full. It happens. I think, was it Hogg or Russell? Both of them did it in this game. Like, yeah, it happens. Like, apart from that, though, I thought he was pretty good, right? 11 runs, 60 metres. In terms of stats, pure stats, that's very tidy. A clean break and 4 defenders beaten. Among attackers this week, those are some of the best stats. There was none of this kind of 8-9 defenders beaten stuff this week. He has 12 from 12 tackles, including, I think, the last tackle on Hogg right before Jonathan Davis turns him over and gets that kind of final breakdown penalty, right? So, I mean, Hogg was trying to beat him on the outside. Didn't manage to get it done. And, I mean, he's the one, I mentioned the clean break. He gets it right at the start of the game, right, when Wales in their own 22. They spin the ball wide. He looks up. I think it's Johnny Gray and maybe McAnally, 2 forwards. He, you know, good decision-making, backs himself and goes through the gap before I think Duhan kind of shoots up from the wing to close him down. So, yeah, I thought Owen Watkin, pretty good, man. 2 passes, 12 from 12 tackles. The turnover conceded, I assume, is the kick out on the full. But, yeah, Owen Watkin. Look what happens when you play a midfielder in the midfield. Happy days. Outside backs. I have gone with Gabin Villiers from France for the left wing spot. Also one where I think if you just looked purely at the stats, you wouldn't pick Villiers. Because, I mean, he gets 7 runs for 19 metres, which ain't that flash for a winger. He has 2 defenders beaten, which is actually okay in this week. Like I said, the defenders beaten counts were pretty low. 2 passes for a winger is, again, okay, because they're often finishing off moves rather than necessarily distributing to other players. 5 from 5 tackles is fine. Has a turnover conceded and a penalty conceded. So, doesn't seem that flash, but I think if you watch the game, he was everywhere. And he is also very visible with that red scrum cap of his. So, like when there's an offload being popped to nobody, who grabs it? Villiers. One of his tackles is just dragging Hugo Keenan. I mean, Villiers not that big a guy. I guess neither is Keenan, but he just drags him a couple of meters into touch. Every time he gets the ball, people called him the torpedo. Apparently, that's a name for him. He's just somehow bursting forward. So, yeah, statistically, I don't think he's that flash, but I do think he was always in the right place at the right time, always managing to get the ball up and over the advantage line. So, yeah, I thought he was pretty key. Obviously, Hansen was pretty flash for Ireland, to be fair. Ioane for Italy, also pretty good. So if you wanted to go with those guys, I wouldn't blame you. But, yeah, there you go. Left wing is Villiers. Right wing, I went with, speaking of kind of like pocket rocket style guys, I went with Darcy Graham, who also 2 weeks in a row has looked, I think, pretty sharp. He only gets, I say only, 3 defenders beaten this week. I think last week was about 5. And as I said, the overall count of guys beating defenders this week was lower. So defensively, guys falling off fewer tackles. He gets a try where he makes Lewis Rees-Zammit look pretty silly. Probably should have been doing better, but he's a hard man to stop. I mean, 2 weeks, I think he did it to Marchant last week as well. So, yeah, he's you can see him coming. It's whether you can stop him or not, something else. So he gets a try. He gets 7 runs for 51 metres, which is very good. 3 defenders beaten, like I mentioned. He gets past 3 from 4 tackles. He does have 1 turnover conceded. But, yeah, I just think when he gets the ball, he looked dangerous. And he's looked more dangerous than Duhan, who was all... It was all about Duhan on that left wing for Scotland last Six Nations, but this Six Nations it's been old Darcy on the right wing. I mean, other right wingers were definitely involved. Pinot was into a bit of everything for France. Malin's had a couple of good try assists and clocked up some good run meters. And Cuthbert, to be fair, didn't get that much ball for Wales, but he was there kind of key moments. So, yeah, you can kind of take your pick, but I'm happy with wee Darcy there. And fullback, I have gone with Liam Williams at the back for Wales. Now, he did get a lot of ball. Remember, there was a lot of kicking in that second half especially, and he was put under a fair bit of pressure by that big boot of Stuart Hogg, but he handled it pretty well. He gets 17 runs, which is more than pretty much anybody else that I've picked this week by some distance. 129 run meters for him. Some of those are kind of free meters because you're a fullback and you just run up kind of unopposed. But if you just take 1 or 2 steps, they don't usually count those in the stats if you just end up hoofing it. He beats a defender. He has 3 passes. And some of those passes, you got to remember, at least I think 2 of them. Like he's been put in a pretty awkward position, chasing a kick back, and he manages to clean it up, avoid some kind of on-rushing tackler, and then pass it to somebody else who then clears. So he just looked very comfortable at the back. He has 3 from 4 tackles. So, yeah, I ended up going with Liam Williams. So there you go. That's the team. I would also say Jaminet for France kicked his goals pretty well, and the goals were the difference in that game, although him and Pinot kind of mucked up the Mac Hansen try, didn't they? That was one that they'll not be looking forward to looking back on the tape. But yeah, overall, Freddie Stewart for England was pretty sharp as well. But there you go. Team of the week. We're 21 minutes in. I better go. You guys let me know your thoughts. Who would you have if you were picking your own 15? Who was great of this lot? Who do you think was terrible? I do think 12 is the hardest pick of all. And I do think the locks were also a wee bit tough. Some of the positions were particularly competitive, but yeah. You guys let me know your thoughts. Thank you as always for the support, guys. If you want to support the channel, check out Patreon in the description below. Check out Buy Me a Coffee, Buy Me a Beer. You guys take care, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.